In this video, I'll be covering my portfolio changes for the last couple weeks. Jumping right in, highlighted in yellow here are my buys and sells, 10 in total. First off, I sold my last SLV call option on March 6th. I have the buys and sells plotted on the chart here to help me visualize the execution, and I'm overall very happy with this trade, as I've talked about before. I got some sells in near the top and didn't panic out during the crash. I'll cover my outlook on adding leverage back later in the video. Next, I took a trade on Bitcoin using MBT futures. I plotted a position bracket to visualize the idea. I wanted to see price base above this upper purple line and, move up. And it did initially, but my mental stop was closing below that line and really breaking these lows down here. So since we didn't have that continuation, I exited for a $631 loss. And, I've talked about this point in past videos. I'm just super skeptical of the Bitcoin cycle playing out the exact same way it has since its inception with the 4-year cycle and the Bitcoin halving and all that. It just feels too predictable, and out of the box thinking feels like it won't make as deep of a correction and catch all the people that sold and are waiting to buy back in off guard, especially when other hard assets like precious metals have done so well and maybe money has likely rotated there. It just feels fishy, and it's why I maintain holding the MSTR position. Next, I bought a couple tranches of Surge battery metals, ticker NILI on the Canadian Venture Exchange. This is a lithium pick I've seen talked about by a number of analysts I follow. Their flagship project is claimed as the highest grade lithium resource in the US, so very safe jurisdiction. Insiders own a little over 13% of the company, and chairman of the board, Graham Harris, has continued accumulating into this year, increasing his position over 40% since April of 2025. This company is also backed by Ross Jennings, who is an 8% shareholder and is a big investor behind Millennium Potash as well. Next, I bought a large initial position in Dakota Gold, ticker DC on the NYSE. This is a gold exploration and development company backed and led by Bob Quartermain. In the 2000 to 2011 precious metals bull market, and before that, really, he was involved with the success of Silver Standard Resources, and I think he helped create Pretium Resources, two big successful companies. He's regarded highly by Rick Rule, who I greatly respect, so I think betting on Bob delivering here is a solid bet. And their flagship project is in South Dakota, hence the name Dakota Gold, so safe jurisdiction. The current outlook is production beginning in 2029. Insiders own a little over 11%, and Bob has bought more shares than he sold this year. Next, I bought a fairly large initial position in Equinox Gold. They're a larger gold producer and have made strides to clean up their balance sheet and increase production. They could cash flow almost $3 billion in 2028, which at a 12 times cash flow multiple would be a market cap of about $36 billion versus their about $9 billion market cap today. So I think that's almost 300% upside on a more senior miner that may have reduced risk, and even more if gold continues the bull market to my target of 7,000 or higher. This company is also backed by Ross Beatty, who is another serially successful individual in the mining industry, also regarded highly by Rick Rule. One call out that I don't think is a red flag, but a consideration, is that insider ownership is only about 3.7% of the company, but it is a larger market cap stock, and sales by insiders have only been a portion of their holdings, and Ross Beatty hasn't sold any shares. And last portfolio move, I bought a few tranches of BHP. I made an overview video about the stock recently that I'll link on the screen here. I talked about accumulating a pretty large position here if price allows. I'm thinking up to 20 or 30,000. The gist is they're the world's largest copper miner. They plan to grow copper production another 40% into the 2030s. And they have 4 legacy copper projects not factored into their guidance that could have production restarted if the copper price incentivized that in the long term. which seems potentially likely. Plus, with the larger commodity complex secular bull market I think we're in, I think it's a great long term hold. I've also heard Rick mention he could see himself holding BHP through his death. And given his age, that indicates he thinks it could perform well over the next 20 plus years. And to me, with the copper we need from the basic GDP growth, the electrification, the infrastructure buildup of emerging countries, and the structural supply deficits that the copper market faces, this company just makes a lot of sense. Right. Something I'm thinking about this is the relative or quote unquote safety versus the potential for high reward. If I bought stocks that are just straight copper, yes, that's probably going to outperform BHP depending on the company. But a lot of those companies don't have the defensive position that I think BHP does. And they also don't pay as high of a dividend. BHP is at almost 4% at these prices. Real quick on the precious metals outlook, nothing has changed from my previous videos. Cycles still have me eyeing a potential low in April, but I've started deploying capital on this weakness anyway. I'd also be looking at this time frame to potentially establish leverage again. The only reason I do it sooner is if silver flushes down to the $54 to $60 level. I'd most likely use options again and would probably play it safe and go out to March or June of 2027. It might take time for the market to recover out of this due to the technical damage. So buying a lot of time feels like a smart plan. And if it went quicker than that, there's still a lot of leverage. And I think perhaps this time I might split options between gold and silver instead of doing all silver, but I'll see. The last point I want to share is that my spidey senses are telling me I might be jumping the gun on these cash deployments. Some things that come to mind is I do still expect more broad market weakness this year. The copper market could be weak in the short term this year, and precious metals could very well be in a longer term correction versus a parabolic dynamic that I think we're in. So I'll continue giving this some more thought over the next week. Maybe I need to slow down the cash deployments a little bit. I'm being pretty aggressive at the moment. But I'll continue thinking about it. I've been sick and mentally cloudy this week, but I just wanted to share this. That's all for this video. Let me know if you would have liked to see something I didn't cover. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.